Hello and welcome to another sound booth tutorial. I'm your host, Daniel Jason Booth, and today I'm going to say she sells seashells by the seashore 50 times. Alrighty, so today we're going to look at processing S's, and it doesn't matter if this is a pop vocal, a folk vocal, or a voiceover. So I've got a video here of me saying she sells seashells by the seashore. I have the SSL channel strip on it. I've filtered a bit of the low end by the looks of it, and I've got a bit of a boost there on the top end, bit on the bottom, and I've taken out a few of the lower mids. S's are basically high frequency distortion, which speakers find it difficult to replicate. We need to deal with these problems. So today we're going to do a shootout between a few different techniques, and it's always better to have more techniques up your sleeve than to only have the one approach. Here are 7 different approaches I have taken. Sometimes I do a combination of these different approaches, but I would like to show you today what each of these sounds like, and you can pick and choose based on your convenience. Some of these techniques are difficult to set up. Some of them don't quite target everything, and that becomes an issue. Some of these techniques take quite a bit of time to set up. Some of them are quick and dirty. But yeah, I mean, essentially, a de-esser is a compressor. It's a compressor that has a focus on the range of frequencies that are in the kind of S sort of range. In the case of the stock standard Pro Tools one, you can move that frequency around quite a bit. I don't know why you'd want to go down to 500 hertz, but there you go, it's got it. Might be cool for something other than voice. Yeah, all the way up to 16K for that one. The Waves De-Esser has a similar kind of layout in terms of how it's working. Just put these two side by side actually. Basically, this section here, or this section here, that's telling the device, the compressor, what frequencies to listen to when it's de-essing. Let's have a listen to the DigiDesign one first. I think I'll pop it into high frequencies. So here it is without anything on it. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. You know, you can look at the manuals for these plugins, but essentially they're doing much the same thing. You know, this one might be better at certain frequencies than this one, but that's not to say that they always work or that they always sound the best. You've got to experiment. So in the case of this plugin, it's dipping out the high frequencies only. She sells seashells. If I pop it out of that, she sells seashells. Okay, so it's dropping the whole level of the entire track. And that's pretty basic stuff. I'm not going to go into that too deep. The side chain, have a listen to the side chain. You can listen to the side chain on both of these plugins. Let's pop it back into high frequency mode. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. Let's have a listen to the Waves one. Let's see what that one does. Pop that into split. She sells seashells by the seashore. Okay, so maybe that one is a high pass for the side chain. So it's looking at frequencies at 5.9 and above. Ultimately, I don't care. I just care how it sounds. So whatever works, whatever gets the job done. She sells seashells by the seashore. 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 All right, so let's see how that sounds. We'll switch it back into audio. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. Okay, what about this one? She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells
by the seashore.
Let's pop it into wide.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells.
So this one seems to be having trouble with that seashells. Okay.
She sells seashells.
How much does that poke out? More than if we're using the waves one. Okay.
She sells seashells.
So it's dipping it out quite a lot. It's a lot of attenuation there, which is great. In this case, this plugin is winning the shootout. So how about we move on from there? We'll leave that. Let's look at the next technique. So as I said, we do have, by the way, the SSL channels doing the exact same thing on every channel. So as I stated before, the De-Esser is a compressor. It's got a focused side chain. I'll just move me out of the way. This is the compressor side chain. So this is the EQ. And as you can see, it is focused on 6K. So that's what the compressor is reacting to and listening to. So let's have a listen to that.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
You can set up a compressor to look at a specific frequency, or you can duplicate the track out and EQ just the section of the sound, the frequencies that you want to poke out. Bob Clearmountain does something like that on an SSL, and all he's essentially doing is he's duplicating the track out and filtering it and sending that through a bus and into a side chain and kind of controlling the compressor that way. In this case, we have access to the compressor side chain, so I'm not going to do that. To get a compressor to do this properly, you kind of need to have a fast attack. You have a slower attack. Let's take it up to 30 milliseconds or more. Yeah, that'll do.
She sells seashells.
It's letting that leading edge of the S's come through.
She sells seashells.
And I think that's too much.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
I quite like the way that's working, but it does have a sound. It has a particular sound, and you'll hear this as we move on through the different examples. All right. So we've got compressors, we've got de-essers, and we've got multi-band compressors. I've got two different examples here because I wasn't really sure which one I would favor. In this case, I've bypassed the bottom three bands and I'm compressing just the top. Let's have a listen to that.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
Now that probably sounds better, but it's because I'm having to compensate with the boost. If I get rid of the boost, probably sounds pretty dull.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
I compare that back with the compressor.
She sells seashells. She sells seashells.
To me, it feels quite dull as a result.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
And that's, the waves one there is doing a pretty good job of de-essing. If I take the range up, which is the amount of attenuation, the maximum amount,
she sells seashells.
I think that seashells gets through a bit too harsh.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
What's happening on this plugin is this is the attack for that band, so I've got it as fast as possible. I've also extended it to 200 plus milliseconds. So you can run the release of that band a bit longer, set the threshold where you want it.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
Might take that down a bit further.
She sells seashells by the sea.
That to me sounds dull.
She sells
Okay, the way you compensate for that is to add a bit of boost gain to that band.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
So that's one way of...
She sells.
Okay, that sounds pretty similar. Moving on. Actually, before I move on, The other way that you could use the multiband is like a focused bell. So let's have a look at that. And I'm just using this band here.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
So it's not quite getting that seashells.
She sells seashells.
So, in this case, I think I prefer grabbing the top. I think that seems to work a bit better than this approach.
She sells seashells.
I'll lower the threshold. Might take down the release so that releases the compression for that band a bit sooner.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
So to me, that's dulled up the sound. It's dulled it down quite a bit if we compare it back to the De-Esser version.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells.
So it's quite a bit different.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
That's getting there. That's much better.
She sells seashells by the sea.
Still not getting it though, I don't think. Still not getting that C enough. Did the other one do a better job?
She sells seashells by the seashore.
I think that does a better job. So, that would be my preferred option there. Moving on. The next technique is a bit similar, I guess, and that is to use a dynamic equalizer. I've got this dynamic equalizer here, which I quite like. And in this case, the side chain is this filter here. So it's set to 12,000 hertz. Let's have a go at dialing that in.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
Okay, so quite a few controls on this, but it's essentially the same type of thing. A de-esser is essentially you don't have control over the attack and release. If you do use compression, whether it be a standard compressor, a multiband, or a dynamic EQ, which is like a compressor but like an EQ, you do still have access to the attack and release. And you've got a threshold here.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
What if I take the threshold up and I increase the range of which it will compress? So from 4 to about 8. Let's double it.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
It's not bad. I might change the width of the filter, so the bell curve in this case.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
It's actually doing a pretty good job. What does it sound like compared to the De-Esser?
She sells seashells by. She sells seashells by the seashore.
It's not bad actually. It's doing a good job.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the.
So far, I think it's probably doing the better job of the lot so far.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
Maybe just a tad much, but it's pretty decent. Why trigger it with 12K? I don't know. There seems to be a lot less going on up there. If you are boosting an EQ before a de-esser, or you recorded it with the EQ, you'll have all of that top end in the voice, and that top end might trigger it. So maybe the part of the S that you want to get is within that airy sort of range, and that just helps by triggering it a bit higher. Let's maybe go back and have a look at this de-esser again, and we'll trigger it at 12 and just see if that makes any difference.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
It's pretty good. All right. Let's try the DigiDesign one again.
She sells seashells.
We'll switch that in a wide band because it is doing a high pass. You want it to actually drop everything in this case, but be triggered by the 12K.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She
I think that's an improvement. I don't know if it's the option I would go for. It sounds quite compressed. Similarly, you can listen to the side chain.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
Yeah, that pokes your ears out and your eyes. It's funny though, like listening to that side chain, I would never think to have a go at de-essing by listening to that higher frequency. It seems to be working. I haven't got time to test every single variable, but the last three are quite similar. So let's start off with clip gain. We've only got the SSL channel strip there. And if you know clip gain, it's pretty basic. You go in, you turn down the bits that you don't want to stand out. And it's pretty clear by looking at it what the S's are, because it is high frequency distortion. So, there they are. Turn them down. I do it by ear. Let's have a listen to how that sounds.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
So comparing it back to de-essing.
She sells seashells.
Okay, big difference there.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
So I actually think that's better. The disadvantage, I guess, of using the clip gain is that it's pre-insert. So you're going to have to work with whatever sound you've got and how it sounds hitting all your different processing. Whether that works in your particular situation, that's something for you to explore. How does it compare to dynamic EQ?
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
I think in this example, it's actually better. It's definitely better than de-essing, I think.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
The next available option, which most of you will be familiar with, is automation. So it's doing a very similar thing to the clip gain. Okay, let's have a listen to how that sounds.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
From what I can tell, that's uber transparent. It's really transparent.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
So that's the De-Esser.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
It seems to be a lot smoother.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
That actually sounds quite compressed. It sounds a bit more toppy, and it also feels like it's got a bit more bottom end.
She sells seashells.
A low mid thing happening there.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
And that's not bad, but I'm not in love with it.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
I think that's really damn transparent. And depending on how far along you are with your track, that's great. But what happens when you get to the end of your mix and you maybe want to throw in some automation? I guess the only thing you can do then is send that out to an aux track and do your automation there. So my workaround for that, which sounds exactly the same as the automation, is to throw a trim plugin on there and basically automate the volume. Literally sounds the same. We could flick back and forth between these two.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
I've done some careful matching between these two tracks and they're pretty much identical. The great thing about the trim plugin is if you've got a lot of processing, you just move it to the end of the chain and it's de-essing everything that you are hearing through all of your plugins that you've got on that vocal. So the great thing is that you just go back into your automation for that trim plugin and, it's very easy to go back in and then just adjust and then have automation on top of that. So you've got all your processing coming in and you're going, yep, I like that. You get to your trim, you trim out all the S's, and then you do your final automation, because that actually comes before the final fader automation. So that's it. So let's have a listen. No real point, as far as I'm concerned, in listening to differences between those two, because they're pretty much identical. It just depends on, in your workflow. If you like the sound of the vocal, you're not going to automate it, then use your automation. If you want to be able to change things and have that flexibility, then I would use the trim plugin. So let's finally cover them. Let's do the final shootout, starting with the De-Esser.
She sells seashells by the seashore. 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 She sells seashells by the seashore.
For my money, either the automation or the trim automation win the day in this regard. Probably my favorite technique is using the trim plugin to de-ess, because it does leave you with that flexibility. Whether you de-ess at the beginning of the chain or the end of the chain, or both, that's up to you. Sometimes you need 2 de-esses to get the job done correctly and fast. But if I want it done really transparently, I'm always going to go for the harder option. And yes, it takes time. But to me, you can hear it. It sounds so much better than the de-essed.
She sells seashells. She sells seashells.
Now, let's talk about why certain de-essers or compressors or whatever technique you're using, why does that fall down? If we look at it through a frequency analyzer, you'll see why de-essers struggle to capture the exact frequencies that you want to get rid of.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
All right, so the sh sound is kind of around 2K, 2 to 3K, maybe as high as 4. And then you've got the S, the actual S sounds are about 6K and up. Compressor is not smart. It's not going to be able to shift how it hears that. That's why they fall down, and that's why you've got to really be careful in which ones you select. And obviously for me, all of these are the kind of the fast food options, and these are the manual, hard labor, but fine dining versions of de-essing, because they take that extra time. And you've got 7 options there. Some of them work better than others. Some of them target specific parts of those S's that the others don't. Just as a bonus technique, one thing which has nothing to do with mixing, it has everything to do with recording, and that is using, I'll just expand my thing here. We've got in the video, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a pencil there. It actually acts as a natural de-esser.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
Now, nothing has changed in between those two, apart from the fact that there's a pencil in the way, okay? You can try a pen, you can try a pencil, you can try a straw, try different things and see what works. I'm not advocating by any means that it's perfect. There's still a few things that it doesn't take care of, but if you're thinking of getting the recording without having to use a de-esser, it's actually really great. That's my bonus tip, and I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's not the most riveting thing, but it is definitely an important and fundamental skill to be able to de-ess something properly, but also know the differences between all of these different techniques, the advantages or disadvantages to each. Really, it all depends on how much time you've got, whether you want to do automated or manual de-essing, how that sits in the track, and what sort of artifacts they're leaving behind. Thanks for putting up with the repeated S's. If you need clarification on any of these techniques, let me know and I'll get back to you. I read every single comment. Please like, share, subscribe. Until next time, happy mixing.